How we doing? How we doing? This is Destination Denver, Colorado, and I've got a good one for you today. We're answering the age-old question, what are winters like in Denver, Colorado? Let's do it. Welcome to, or hopefully back to the channel. This is Destination Denver, Colorado. I am your host, Jimmy Everetts. And if you are interested in learning all the ins and outs, pros and cons of moving to or around Denver, Colorado, then this is the channel for you. So having said that, make sure to click that subscribe button as well as the notification icon down below so you can get a heads up whenever I drop a new video coming every single week. And listen, as much as I enjoy being out in nature and creating these videos, I like even more to be a resource for your potential move to Colorado. So having said that, the phone number and email popping up below, just know I am always the person answering those phone calls, answering those texts, answering those emails, there when you need it. Now that we are done with that fun-filled stuff, let's get down to what we came here for, and that is to answer the question, what are winters like in Denver, Colorado? So I'm gonna start my conversation with point number one and some good news, and that is the fact that Denver on average gets 300 days of sunshine. Now we talk about that all the time, but I think it's very important for this conversation because at the end of the day, a lot of you are going to be coming from areas such as the Midwest, where basically from the end of September through April, it's just gray skies and gloomy. Denver doesn't get that. You may have days like today where it's gray and it's muggy, but we know by tomorrow or the next day, we're gonna see blue skies again. We know the sun's going to be out. We know our moods are going to improve. So if you're thinking about that vitamin D, Denver's a good spot for you, even in the winter. So the second thing to keep in mind when we get into winter in Denver, and while it's not necessarily earth-shattering, but Denver is already a high plains desert. Why does that matter? Well, when we get into wintertime, Denver, and especially as you get into the mountains, it gets brutally dry and it gets brutally dry fast. What does that mean to you? Well, listen, it's October 31st. The weather outside isn't that bad. We're in the low 40s right now. And I'm wearing gloves, not because my fingers can't take the cold, but because if I don't wear gloves within about 30 to 45 minutes, my hands are gonna be dried out. They might even start cracking. When it gets really cold here, when it gets below freezing, it gets closer to the teens, you have to wear gloves. You have to put on lotion damn near every single day. And another key factor for you is the fact that in your homes, you're gonna wanna make sure that you run at least 1 or 2 humidifiers throughout the house. You might not notice it at first, but it will make a huge difference. And for those of you who come from a humid climate, it's gonna throw you for a loop at first. Just be prepared for it. Get that lotion ready. It puts the lotion on its skin. All right, so let's get to the conversation that we're all here for, right? So point number 3, snow. Denver tends to see snow come around in October, early November. Now listen, I know Denver has a reputation for just being piled and covered with snow all winter long, and it's just not true. In fact, there's a lot of times where you'll get through November and December with very little snow. That's because it likes to sneak up on us. So Denver sees the majority of its snow in January, February, and historically, March is actually our snowiest month. Snowiest, I had to practice that a few times. Now, you'll see a bit of snow come April, and you might even get the occasional late season snowstorm in May, but typically starts to cut off. Now, when we talk about snow, it's gorgeous. We love it while it's here. We enjoy it when it's gone. But something to keep in mind is, again, those 300 days of sunshine. What does that mean to you during the winter? It doesn't just mean gorgeous skies and getting outside. It means that the snow tends to melt pretty fast. So even though it might pile down on us on any given day, within hours and certainly within days, it tends to be gone. So even in the winter, when it snows, and it's beautiful when it comes down, but also keep in mind, it tends to melt pretty fast. The sun comes out, and within hours, and certainly within days, most, if not all of the snow we have seen is gone. Now, this is a good opportunity to make a random point, and that is the fact that depending on where you live and if you own a home, I want you to remember this: north-facing driveways. It's something I would have never considered before in my life. I heard about it when I moved to Denver. Now I own a home that, yes, I knew it when I bought it. It has a north-facing driveway. Granted, it's the only thing I didn't like about the house. But what does it mean? Well, based on our position on the globe and the track the sun takes, north-facing driveways don't get a lot, and many of them, like mine, don't get any sun during the winter. What that means to you is this: your neighbor, or excuse me, the person on the other side of the street who has a south-facing driveway, they are going to get sun on their driveway all day. Their driveway is constantly going to melt whenever there is snow on it. You and me, my friend, we're not going to be so lucky. We're going to have to get out and shovel because our driveway is not going to see any melting snow unless it actually gets warm out. We tend to have more accumulation. It's just not fun. So when you're looking for houses, I'm certainly not telling you not to buy a home with a north-facing driveway. I'm just going to tell you we're going to get a little more exercise, a little more bicep work, because chances are we're going to shovel a little more snow. And as we are talking about snow, we have to talk about point number 4, which is driving in snow. Now, listen, if you have a vehicle that is all-wheel drive or four-wheel drive, you're in great shape. Truth be told, if you have a vehicle with front-wheel drive, you're going to be okay in most situations in and around the city. You're not going to be great going up to the mountains, and yes, there are going to be some hills when it gets icy out where you're going to struggle. If you drive something that is rear-wheel drive and you plan on driving that year-round at some point, I'm sorry, I'd like to say it nicer, but we're not going to like you. Now, if you haven't dealt with snow before, I want you to understand that it is not the snow that is a problem. The problem is truly ice underneath the snow. That is the moment where no matter what kind of car you drive, you can easily lose control. So this is what I would tell you. If you are moving to Denver, if you're moving anywhere where you're going to deal with snow for the first time, wait for that first good snowfall. Take your vehicle to an empty parking lot and just practice. Just drive around and get a feel for what your car does in certain weather. You are going to feel the difference between driving on snow and driving on ice. Snow, you're going to gain some traction, you're going to be able to move. Ice, at any moment, you're not going to have control, and that's where you're going to see people tend to drive slower, a little more cautious. Just be aware of it. Snow isn't the problem, ice is. Now, I get asked a lot by people moving out here, do I need snow tires? Well, I mean, that truly depends. I think if you're living in or around the city, and especially if you have all-wheel drive or four-wheel drive, no, you don't need snow tires. Unless you want them, okay, but you don't really need them. Front-wheel drive, and listen, the reason front-wheel drive is so beneficial in comparison to rear-wheel drive is because most of the weight of your vehicle is there, and so that's going to at least give you more traction. I don't care what kind of tires you put on your car if it's rear-wheel drive. At some point, all of your energy in your car is coming from the back of the vehicle where there's light weight. You tend to fishtail a lot. I don't care if you have spikes in your tires, you're gonna have problems. So can you buy some snow tires? Sure. Is it gonna make a huge difference? I don't think so, not unless, again, you're living in the foothills and you're getting into the mountains, and then it might be worth something looking into. Another thing to keep in mind concerning vehicles and winter and snow is that depending on where you are in the city and depending on your parking situation, parking can get a bit more challenging in the wintertime. And obviously, let's be real, if you do not have a garage or covered parking, you're gonna have a handful of mornings where you have to come out early, scrape off your car, heat it up, get it ready for work. So if you're used to that, if you're coming from a place with snow, just same old, same old. If you're moving here from Arizona or Florida, just be prepared. There are going to be mornings where you have to give yourself an extra 10, 15 minutes to get outside, get that car cleared off, and get to work. Or you can just buy a house with a garage. There's always options. All right, so I'm going to disappoint some folks as I discuss point number 5, but ski resorts, I got to tell you, I'm not much of a skier, but I'm excellent at falling down a mountain. So ski resorts here in Colorado tend to open towards the end of November, early December. Little fun fact, the sun loses about 20 to 30% of its energy around that time of year, so the snow can start to accumulate. And these resorts, even if they don't get a lot of snow up there, they've done a hell of a job improving their ability to create snow. So those lifts start to open up, people start to get up the mountain. What do you need to know? You need to know that I-70 is your primary route for getting up into the mountains. That is going to take you to most of your main ski resorts. Obviously, you're going to branch off for many of them, but I-70 is the core. What that means, especially if you're heading up to the mountains on the weekends, is that you're going to see a lot of traffic going west as the weekend begins, and a heck of a lot of traffic coming back east as the weekend ends. So give yourself extra time and understand, and it drives people in Colorado crazy, but understand that there's going to be moments where I-70 is not just backed up, it's stopped, especially if you have a wreck and especially if there is heavy snow. That's just part of it. When we're talking about skiing, I should also remind you that Denver and the mountains obviously are high altitude, and even though that sun has lost some of its luster, it will still burn the hell out of you. So make sure you throw on that sunscreen. Don't skip it. You'll thank me for it later. And listen, if you're like me and you need to improve your skiing or snowboarding ability, just a tip from me to you, check out A-Basin. It's not too far from Denver, about a 45-minute drive. It's not the most popular resort or ski area for locals or for people who really get up to the mountains, but when it comes to getting lessons, they have some of the best instructors, and it's nice and close. You can get up there, fall on your butt, learn your lessons, and then get up to the mountains for the big slopes. All right, so point number 6, which we could call 5+1, is that the weather in the winter changes fast. You could literally have a morning like today where you wake up, it's 32 degrees, it's muggy out, and by the afternoon, it's nice and warm. Now, this can also work in the reverse, so I'm always gonna stress to you, or suggest to you, I should say, bundle up or bring some extra clothes. It's a lot easier to take some clothes off, to de-layer, than to not have what you need. I'll tell you a story. I took a date years ago, took a date to a Denver Broncos game. We leave in the morning, it's nice and warm out. This girl shows up and she has a t-shirt on, she doesn't have a hat, she doesn't have gloves, and it's January. And I knew we were in trouble, but I was stuck. We get to the game, again, it starts nice, but by halftime, I can see she's starting to get chilly and I'm taking off layers, giving it to her. By the end of the game, my ass had to sit in the stands in my t-shirt, no hat, no gloves, no nothing, freezing my tail off. Moral of the story, wear more, take it off if you need to. It's a lot easier to cool down than it is to try to heat up when you don't have any clothes. And playing off that, a really cool thing about Denver and something that I love, I've lived here most of my life, but I have lived in the Midwest and I've lived on the East Coast, is that Denver routinely gets just these miracle days in the middle of the winter. I mean, it will be cold, 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 and then all of a sudden you'll have a couple days where it's 60, 70 degrees. People are in shorts, they're in t-shirts, they're outside immediately. The second we see that weather, we're all outside. In fact, the last couple years, for some reason, I told you February is one of our snowiest months. We've seen just a ton of 60-degree days in February. Granted, the snow comes back, yes, it does get chilly, but we get those days in between. Just makes winter seem that much faster, that much easier to get through. So listen, if you're coming to Denver and this is going to be your first winter, I mean your first real winter, maybe you've lived in a climate that is pretty warm, understand it's gonna take some getting used to. Bundle up. If you need to wear multiple layers until your body gets used to it, do it. But the winters aren't as bad as people make it sound. With all respect to Michigan or Wisconsin or Minnesota, we're not there. You're gonna get a lot of sun, you're gonna get a lot of opportunities to go outside, you're gonna enjoy the snow to some extent, except for when you can't drive in it. By and large, make yourself a snowman, have a hot chocolate, maybe a hot toddy, learn how to ski or fall down a mountain like me, and let's do winter right. So listen, you want to talk about falling down a mountain or figuring out how to drive on ice, or perhaps figuring out how to move to Denver, I'm your Huckleberry. So once again, that number and email popping up below, however you want to say that. I'm always the person answering the phone calls, answering the texts, answering the emails. This is Destination Denver, Colorado. I am Jimmy Everetts. Until next time,